All right, welcome back to another edition of Scaling Secrets Podcast. I am your host, Alex Mahaz. Today, we have a true titan in the world of leadership and learning. With nearly 3 decades of experience leading his company, LearnIT, he has gained invaluable insights into what it takes to be successful and leading. Also, he's gained invaluable insights on what it takes to really grow and have a book too. His Learn It All book we'll also get into as well. So without further ado, everybody, let's welcome Damon Lembi. How you doing, Damien?
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me here today. It's good to be here.
Appreciate you joining us. So let's jump right into it, Damien. So your book, The Learn It All Leader, it really emphasizes the importance of being a learn it all rather than a know it all. So can you just share with us what a great leader should adapt in terms of his mindset and how it could benefit teams that he's working with?
Sure. So, like you just mentioned in my book, I talk about the difference between a learn it all and a know it all. And so if we start off with a know it all, they're typically somebody who comes in, they got all the answers, they have it all figured out, right? They don't need to ask for help. Their way is the best way. That's how it's going to work. Learn it all is quite the opposite. A learn it all has a beginner's mind. They're open to ideas. They challenge their own ideas, which I think is really important. And really, most importantly, is they surround themselves with great talent. They surround themselves with people who are smarter than they are, who have diverse opinions, who aren't afraid to challenge you on your opinions. And a great leader puts them in the position to be successful. They give them the tools and the resources that they need to be successful. And then you turn your team over, like in sports, you have a coach and you have your players. And a great leader is a coach who then puts his players in a position to succeed, and you go from there.
And I think, bringing the best out of others as well is something that a really strong leader has that ability to do. So always putting yourself before others. That's what I've tend to notice. So I love that. In terms of just imposter syndrome, that's something that many young professionals, business owners struggle with. Can you just walk us through your three-step approach to just overcoming some of these challenges and how that's helped you personally?
Great. So Alex, I think we've all dealt with imposter syndrome and self-doubt, or call it our inner critic at some point. And for me, it started, take a step back. My story is I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area playing sports. In high school, I figured that my best chance to make it in college sports would be in baseball. I was lucky. I got drafted by the Atlanta Braves quite a while ago. I'm dating myself here in 1990. I ended up going to college, started off at Pepperdine. And when I got to Pepperdine, I was kind of like, everybody was as good as I was, right? You go from being like the best in the league in the county. I know you pitched in high school, and then you get into college and, the talent's really ramped up. And that was really the first time I ever experienced imposter syndrome. Am I good enough to be here? Do I belong? I got hurt and I ended up leaving Pepperdine, went up to play at Arizona State, hit a home run in the College World Series, which was cool. And was ready to move on to the next stage of my career, and didn't get drafted again, and it was over with. And so I had to really figure out, are my skills transferable? What did I learn that I can use? And I started at this company called LearnIT, and I worked really hard. I just kind of wanted to outwork everybody. And when I was concerned with whether or not I was good enough or I belonged, is really what I formulated back in my playing days. By the time I got to Arizona State, was a 3-step approach to imposter syndrome. And that one, step number 1 is work really hard. Now, I'm not saying work 10 to 14 hours a day, Alex, but put in consecutive, consistent work, whatever it is you're doing or that you're worried about. Step number 2 is focus. Focus, don't procrastinate. But let's say, for instance, you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to raise money and you have to give presentations and you're scared and you're worried about it. Focus in on practicing that presentation. Do what you need to do to be successful. So those are the first 2 steps: working hard and deliberate practice, which is focus. And then when it comes time to step on the field, in this case, a presentation, step 3 is really learn and let go. At this point, know that you feel confident, you put in the effort, and it's time for game time. Give it your best shot. And then if it goes great, fantastic. If you fail, hey, that's okay too. There's always things you can learn from, and don't beat yourself up over it. I think a lot of times people take themselves much too serious and they get too wound up. And as I'm sure you're aware, when you're facing a great hitter and the count's 3-0, you got to just go ahead and challenge them instead of getting too wound up and nervous. So those are my 3 steps, really. Work hard, focus, and then learn and let go. And don't take yourself too seriously, and also how the process and the effort you put in to the effort.
100%. Yeah, and just kind of going off of that too. I know like, delayed gratification is a really big topic nowadays. And like you just mentioned, it's important to celebrate your wins, even if they're small. Can you just talk about how that's helped you, with your company, LearnIT, celebrating small little wins and how that compounds over time into bigger things?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I love the fact that you bring up delayed gratification, because so many of us, if you don't see results right away, you get frustrated and maybe you give up. How it has affected LearnIT, or how I've incorporated that into LearnIT over the years, we're a very sales and marketing focused organization. And what I call mini steps are their little wins along the road. So it's very difficult. Going back to another sports analogy, very rarely in football does somebody throw a 95-yard Hail Mary touchdown. They move the ball down the field. And so that's what we always have tried in sales. We worked on in sales is let's celebrate first of all, that you're making 100 calls a day or whatever it is you're doing, or the meetings you've booked, or you've had a good conversation, or if you moved it from discovery to proposal. Those are the what I call mini steps, the wins along the way. And if all those add up, then you're going to get the win at the end of the day, the big sale. But if you're always focused on going from A to Z and you skip all those steps, sometimes it's more important, requires you to go slow to go fast. Because if you go fast right off the bat and you try different hacks or stuff, then you're going to miss out. So delayed gratification, I think in the professional world, is putting in the effort and doing the work and celebrating those little wins along the line.
I love that. Yeah, and I think really being able to not take yourself too seriously too, and just enjoy the process and have fun with it. Because I think now there's just such a hustle culture, especially for young entrepreneurs. And so I think a lot of burnout can come from that. So really just not taking yourself too serious, but as long as you're getting your work done, that's the most important thing. I want to talk about your book a little bit. In your book, you mentioned the concept of trust tax and why it's worth paying. Can you elaborate just on what this exactly means and how leaders can build trust within their organizations?
Sure. So when I look at, we all go into relationships, personal, professional, whatever it is, and if you're an entrepreneur or a business leader for long enough, you're going to get burned sometimes, Alex. It's just going to happen, right? So you have a choice going into relationships. Are you going to be cynical? Are you going to be skeptical about people, thinking they're always out to get you? Or you have the choice that you can believe in them and that people have the best interest at mind and really put 100% into those relationships. And what I call the trust tax is I choose to go into relationships thinking people have best intentions and they're not here to, screw me over. If it happens, it happens. You learn from it, you move forward. But the trust tax is the times that you get, so for lack of a better statement, you get screwed over, right? That's going to happen sometimes. And that's just a tax you have to pay. But I think it's really worth paying it, because if you don't, first of all, I think going into relationships and having all this negative energy, it wears you out. And two, having all this negative energy and being skeptical can also prevent you from really missing out on some great opportunities and great people to work with. And as a leader, you want to be able to bring people in, believe in them, and trust them. Give them the space to do their work and not have to look over their shoulder all the time. And that's really what I mean by paying the trust tax. It happens every now and then, but in the long run, it's, the ROI on it's right there for you.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, not micromanaging. I think, especially as a business owner, a leader, even an athlete too, a coach,
Hmm.
if you can avoid micromanagement and really leading by example through your actions, that's going to pay dividends long term. So,
It is, and it's also whether you're a coach or a leader, you want to set clear outcomes and goals and expectations for your team. And I think great leaders, as in great coaches, they teach their team to hold accountable themselves, so that players can help hold each other accountable. And the same thing goes in the work environment. Say you have again a sales team, and they're all making outbound prospecting calls, and they have a friendly but collaborative and competitive environment. Hey, you know what? All of us, this is our responsibility. Let's do this. We don't need our sales leader here looking over our shoulders, especially in these days where a lot of us are working remote or hybrid. You want to create a culture that sets that accountability is important, and that it happens at all levels of the organization, not just
yeah.
always top down, giving direction, pointing things out.
100%. Yeah. And just, I want to go off of that a little bit more. I want to dive deeper. So, obviously, you worked with some really great Hall of Fame baseball coaches throughout your career, and I'm curious, like, what were some valuable lessons just about leadership or business or life that you transitioned into Learn It?
Sure. And I didn't really realize it. And I'm sure that and if you have any examples, I'd love to hear what you have
Yeah.
to say.
Hmm.
But I didn't really realize at the time, because I never had a job until I got to learn it. I was always playing baseball somewhere. But the lessons that I learned playing from three Hall of Fame college coaches were invaluable. One lesson I think it's really important is like an Andy Lopez at Pepperdine. We were a small D1 school, and he set the vision of we're going to win the College World Series. And that was his moonshot vision that he had. And a lot of people thought, well, I don't know if that's even possible. You're a small D1 school; they've never made it past the regionals. But he built a team, and that was the purpose and the focus of that team. And I ended up getting hurt and left. But you know what? They won the College World Series the very next year. So that was a great lesson I learned of setting a clear vision and getting everybody behind it. Another lesson I learned from Coach Lopez, he only had two rules. And I think this really applies to the business world. Rule number one, show up on time. I don't really think that there's any excuse to be late. I think you got to respect people's time and what they have to do. Rule number two is have integrity, do the right thing. And so rule number one is pretty self-explanatory. It's like, okay, show up on time. That makes sense. Coach Lopez told me we reconnected after 30 years when I was writing my book. And he said, a lot of players would say, well, Damon, I don't understand or Coach Lopez, I don't understand what do the right thing means. And his thing is what it means, the difference between right and wrong. That if you're doing something that's going to put your coworker in a position to fail, or you're overpromising and underproducing, or you're flat out cheating on a sales contest, that's not having ethics, or you're not having any integrity. So show up on time and do the right thing. What about you, Alex? Do you have anything that you recall from your playing days that you learned
Yeah.
that you carried forward?
Oh yeah, that first one, showing up on time. Everything you said, control the controllables. That's what I think about right away.
I love that. Yeah.
I had a coach, a mentor when I was younger. His name was Coach Shane, Greg Shane, and he was one of my big role models growing up. And he always said, control the things that you can control. Showing up on time.
Yeah.
If you're on time, you're late. So always try to get to the field 30 to 40 minutes before everybody else. So if that's 2 hours, get there 2.5 hours early. I was always a pitcher, so I had to obviously prepare a lot more, and I had a specific routine. So just knowing what I could control, obviously I
Mhm.
couldn't control certain things. Like if it was going to rain that day in the field, then the
Mhm.
mound was going to be wet or whatever. So yeah, I think the biggest thing was control the controllables and know exactly, how I can maximize myself the best I can. So when I'm going out to compete, I'm prepared. So. Um, yeah.
And the same is good. I love that you said that, control what you can control. And it's also work within your constraints. I see
Mhm.
so many people out there in the business world and the customers we work with who they get so frustrated about things that are happening that are outside of their control. Well, there's nothing you can do about that. So you got to work within your constraints and focus on uh, what's under your control and make the best out of it and go from there. Because if you spend your time worrying about things that you have no control over, you're wasting your time.
Yep. And you could be missing a lot of opportunities that,
A
you
hundred
know,
percent.
could open up a lot more doors that you didn't even know existed, because you're worried about little micro crumb variables that are not producing what you could. So 100%. Yeah. I'm curious. Let's say a client, a customer, comes to LearnIT, your
Okay.
company, and they're interested in some of the services that you provide. Can you just, talk about some of the services and, how you guys work with some of your Fortune 100 companies and different clients?
Sure. So LearnIT, we are a corporate training company and headquartered out of the Bay Area, and we focus on virtual instructor-led training. And customers turn to us when they want to upskill managers. So somebody gets recently promoted to becoming a manager, and they don't really have the skill set necessary to be successful. So we come in and we design a program, a training program for them. It's one way that people work with us. Another one is they're struggling with communication. Maybe there's communication breakdowns. They're working in silos and there's no cross-function training or cross-function collaboration. So we help break down those barriers for teams to work together. That's another really common one. And on the other side of the fence, we do a lot of technical training as well. It's surprising great how many people still need to learn how to use Microsoft Excel and really utilize that to make themselves more efficient. So that's really where LearnIT focuses on. And we're all B2B. So we typically work with organizations of all sizes and help develop learning paths and sprints, which is a prolonged training program where individuals come as a team usually, and we put them through different training classes on like how to give feedback, how to be self-aware, how to handle difficult conversations, and help them guide them through these instructor-led classes. And we have little coaching sessions in between too to help make it more and help improve the retention, so to speak.
I love that. I love that. So implementing kind of, agile processes, things like that. I love that you said sprints.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, that's important. You can have feedback mechanisms so you can really develop internal teams and
Mhm.
focus on development. So, yeah, I love that. I love that, having those systems in place. Um,
And I think it's important, for everybody out there who is an entrepreneur, and let's say maybe you even have a small team, it's when you can invest in your employees, give them the opportunity for, uh, that's one of the things that LearnIt has done over the years. When we were really small, we're about 80 employees to 100 employees now. But when we were really small, I mean, it was very difficult to us to compete with Salesforce or some of these other massive companies we work with or work against. And what we would do is we'd use LearnIt as like a training ground, so we get these super talented people right out of school or early on in their career, and we give them training opportunities, invest in them, and also give them the opportunity to go out and try things, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and coach them. And so a lot of these individuals have come through and they stay with us for a couple of years. Some stay quite a while, but they always look back on the beginning of their career of being able to roll up their sleeves and actually do work and things that they would have never got an opportunity to do at a Fortune 100 company. And so it's kind of like a sandbox, an early playground for very talented individuals who had the right core values and gave them the opportunity to move forward and be successful.
I love that. It's like a launching pad to endless opportunities wherever you want to
Yes.
see your professional growth go. Yeah.
Say, for instance, you're new, you want to get into SaaS sales, but it's 1,000 people competing, and most of them have a couple of years experience, and the hiring manager says, "Well, you don't have any experience." Well, come to LearnIT if you have the ability, and the work ethic. We'll give you a shot, and you can cut your teeth selling what we sell at LearnIT, and that gives you the experience and makes you more marketable later on in the future. And the nice thing is they get hired at these companies, and a lot of times they bring LearnIT in to train the rest of their team.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Definitely having that training growth support is so important no matter what size company you are.
And it's key for the Gen Z these days. They're one of one of the main things. If you look at what's important to them, sure, compensation is important. Sure, the ability to have flexibility at work, but also we're seeing time over time that they want the opportunity for professional development opportunities for
Hmm.
their career growth, because they're looking at it. They're not looking at, okay, this is what I'm going to do over the next 2 or 3 years. They're looking at like, in my career span of 30, 40 years, how am I going to continue to learn and evolve myself?
100%. And so going off of that, let's say you're hiring for, potential employees. How important is it, hiring for potential over experience? I know that's, a very interesting concept. Can you explain, like why you might believe that's a better approach for hiring somebody that has more potential versus somebody that just looks great on paper, has all the experience?
Yeah, I mean, I made a habit over the years of, when at all possible, to hire for potential over experience. Now, you can't do that in all of the situations, but when you can, you do. And I'm not sure if you're familiar. Are you familiar at all with the Herb Keller story?
I'm not very familiar, no.
So I'll share it for your listeners. It's a story I've probably told, I don't know, hundreds of times. So when Southwest first started, and they were basically on the verge of bankruptcy, they just couldn't compete. So Herb, the founder CEO, he went to the executive team and he said, here's how we're going to compete. We're going to strip down our services and we're going to be the low cost provider, and our prices are going to be at this. And so the board said, well, there's no way that we can survive at that level unless we do more flights per plane a day. And Herb's like, well, that's exactly what we're going to do. And they said, well, the average turnaround time, a plane lands, let's say it was 16 minutes, right? And so they said, we'd have to get that down to about 12 minutes. And Herb's like, exactly. And they said, that's impossible to go from 16 minutes to 12. It can't be done. If we're going to do that, we're going to hire the most experienced people out there from Eastern Airlines, Delta, all the flight crew people, the pros. He's like, I'm going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to go out and hire a bunch of eager young individuals who have no idea, who have never done this before, but they're willing to learn. They have a can-do attitude. And that's exactly what he did, Alex. He hired all these individuals. He told them they had to get it down to 12 minutes. They ended up getting it down to the 10-minute, they call it the 10-minute turn. So they did something, these people, they didn't know any better, right? So they said, hey, this is your goal. This is what we're going to do. And instead of coming with preconceived notions of not being able to do this, they were able to accomplish that. And that's what set Southwest apart. And I just think it's a great example of when you can, especially for small businesses, to hire for potential over experience. Because I've had those situations back early on in my career. I remember a time in Arizona, I'm up on the whiteboard with my sales manager, and somebody in the audience, one of our sales reps, said, what's this guy going to teach me about sales? I've been doing sales since he was in fifth grade. That person didn't last too long, but that's just the wrong attitude. That goes back to the know-it-all mentality, right? I'd rather have somebody who's eager, willing to try and do things differently than somebody who's got it all figured out.
Exactly. Yep. And I think, having a great leader, having good mentors in place, to really take them under their wing when they're coming into an organization is so important too.
That's critical.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Yeah. Going off of that, how do you, you refer to employees as a team rather than family. And I know there's a lot of companies out there, we won't call them out directly, but they refer to a lot of their employees as family. So, what made you adopt this perspective, and how does it impact the culture and dynamics within LearnIT?
So I look at it like, look, definitely, you work with people, you get to know them outside of work, everything great. But I always considered it to be a team over a family. Because again, going back to the sports analogy, or it could be a symphony or whatever you want to do it, I think as a leader, it's your responsibility to assemble the best team possible to put on the field. And with your family, take for instance, you have Aunt Sue. You can't ever stop inviting Auntie Sue to the barbecue, right? But there are times where employees, maybe they've hit their ceiling and they, there's nothing for them to go beyond, and maybe it's time for them to look for a new career. And it works in reverse. Sometimes I've had great employees who've hit their ceiling with LearnIT. And I've challenged them, hey, you've been here 15 years, you're a phenomenal employee, but now it's time for you to go on and challenge yourself and move on. So I think that, if you have that mentality that it's a team over a family, then you're going to always be looking to, and it has nothing to do with not being loyal. I think it's you want to be loyal and honest and upfront, but you need to make sure that you have the best people in the right positions. And if you don't, then sometimes there's a term called top grading, and top grading really means, sometimes you need to move the person out in that position and bring somebody in, especially for these startups who go from 0 to 5 million in revenue and then 5 million to, let's say, 50 million. The person who's your COO when you start, and you get up to $5 million, they may not be the right person to help get you from 5 million to $50 million. And it's sometimes you have to, as a leader, you have to make tough decisions in situations like that. But again, at the end of the day, you got to put the best team on the field.
Yep, 100%. And how important is it to, find that out as quick as possible? If somebody might not be the right fit to get you to the next level in business, how important is that to find that answer?
Well, that's a great question, and that's not something that I've been asked recently. But the reason why that's a great question is because if you have somebody on your team and they're not successful, well, Alex, they're probably miserable, right? They're probably not enjoying coming to work every day. And I know it's really, really difficult to have to let somebody go or terminate somebody. But, if you've done the right thing, and the right thing is that when they've had performance issues, that you've sat down and you've coached them and you've shared with them, that by the time it gets time to let them go, first and foremost, it should never be a surprise. You should never let somebody go and it's like they're completely surprised that they're getting let go. But as long as you've done that part right, when you let them go, I look at it like you're doing them a favor. You're giving them the opportunity to go someplace and find a career, find a job that they feel more confident about, that they could be more successful at. And a lot of times it's a great learning opportunity for them to look at, well, what could they have done differently? ABC company, maybe they could have showed up on time more. Maybe they could have had more of a learn it all mindset. Whatever it is, hopefully that they take these learning opportunities, they find something that they're successful with, and they move on. The worst thing you can do, especially for a small business, is to have people on your team who are underperforming, because everybody else will see that happening and they'll say, okay, Alex over there, he's not getting his work done. So why should I put in these extra hours? There's no penalty for him. And it comes back to holding your team accountable, having clear set goals, a purpose, and outcomes you're striving for, and holding your team accountable. And if you're not hitting those goals, then it's time to have those tough conversations and move somebody out, somebody on.
Yeah, no, completely. And I think it's, yeah, like you said, it's a ripple effect, positive or negative. It could be positive too, somebody that's, busting their butt every day, making 300-400 calls, and that has an effect on that whole sales team, whole marketing team. So
it really does. I would say, if the leader addresses underperformance and moves somebody out, it helps the rest of the organization say, hey, you know what? That they honor and they respect the hard work I'm putting in, and they value, and they treated this person the right way. They communicated with them, they put them through a performance review, and then they moved them out. And then that goes back to winning culture you want. You have a bunch of individuals who have the same purpose, goal, and they're all striving in the same direction.
Definitely. I'll ask you one more question. Any way you want to, we can wrap it up however you want. But what's, like I always ask this, my last question, like what's one piece of advice, that you received, whether that was in your baseball career, collegiate, professional, or into your business journey, whether that's in LearnIT, writing your book, just being a mentor, or even a father. What's one piece of advice you received that's, helped you where you're at today, Damon?
So a little while ago, you mentioned to me, the importance of having a mentor or a coach. So I would say, first and foremost, always go out and seek those types of relationships. Okay, that's very important. Now, to take it to the next level, when you have those type of relationships, those somebody's mentoring you, first of all, listen to them. Their time is valuable. Listen to them. And if you incorporate, Alex, something that they tell you, say that they give you some advice and you incorporate that, you need to follow up with them, thank them for that advice, send them a handwritten note or an email and text and say, hey, you know what, so-and-so, thank you for telling me this. Here's how I took your recommendation and what I did with it. And people love to help other people, but don't make it just a one-way relationship. Be grateful for the time that your mentors have spent with you and share with them how you took advantage of that, and they will go above and beyond to try to help you. They really will.
100%. Yeah. I work with a lot of students with my consulting coaching company. And when I get, testimonials and they're like, this is how I applied this tactic into this job and things like that, that just, it makes me want them even more. So
exactly. Doesn't that make you feel good?
100%. Yeah.
It makes you feel good. And some of the like super successful executives, men and women I know, they're no different. They love getting the feedback and the gratitude. And they can open up a lot more doors for you instead of you just taking all the time. So what you said was a perfect example of the experience.
Yeah, yeah, it's a value exchange, whether that is relationship, business. So yeah, I know I said last question, but I'll end it on. Okay. I guess some of the big goals you see within LearnIT. Let's say the next year, next goal you see the company going towards.
So for LearnIT, we're heading into a uncertainty in 2024. It's going to be I think a tough year. What's really important for us is take care of the customers that we have and really help them achieve their outcomes. From a product perspective, we're doing some pretty exciting things. We're really focused on accountability and habit change, as far as learning. So we're incorporating, even though we're mainly an instructor-led company, we're incorporating, whether it's gamification and other things that will allow our customers to help retain what they're learning and moving forward. So that's really our goals from a product perspective, is how we can help our retain and use what they've learned and make the habit changes that they have set out for at LearnIT in their organization.
I love that. Yeah. Any type you can have more, product development being built out. It's
got to be continuous. You can't be status quo, especially in today's day and age, and whatever industry you're in, whether it's PR, whether it's coaching or learning and development. You need to, do your best to be aware and abreast of what's going on, so you don't turn into the blockbuster.
Yep. Can never be. Yep. 100%. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Damon. Is there anything else you wanna end on? Any last tips, advice for entrepreneurs, business owners?
Well, I would say for those of you out there, and I in my book, in my opinion, great leaders aren't born; they're not made. They're constantly in the making. They're continuing to evolve all the time. If you'd like, connect with me on LinkedIn at Damon Lembi, and if you are interested either for yourself or a high performer on your team, if you connect with me, I'll send you a free class, $250 free class. Take anything from Excel to how to give feedback. Yeah, and then you can also find my book. I got it right here. There you go. Learn It All Leader on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere that you get books. But thank you, Alex. I really appreciate you having me here today, and I enjoyed the questions that you asked.
Likewise, Damon. Appreciate it, and we're really looking forward to see just the future with LearnIT. Next year going into 2024, and I'm excited and really see what you have making. So
me too.
But yeah, once again, I appreciate having you on, and this is another episode of Scaling Secrets podcast. Till next time.